Welcome back to the channel. On this video, let's answer the question, what are the difference between the different methodologies? People express like a little bit of confusion, so I'm going to try to sort that out and put that into perspective. So let's get right into it now. Hello again, Sylvain Gauthier, the executive producer, and let's get into methodologies. Another video before this one, I was focusing more of sorting out standard methodologies and tools. If you haven't seen this video, you probably should go and watch that one before you watch this one. It will make more sense because here, we actually explain what we were trying to do with methodologies was to define the how to do it versus the standard is what needs to be done. So this is a common question these days because people are trying to sort out, what should I do? Should I learn take this kind of course or this kind of course? Should I learn Agile? Should I learn Scrum? Should I learn this project management for IT, project management for engineer? Or should I learn a fundamental? So there's a little bit of confusion for people in terms of, what's the difference between these things. So we already sorted out the standard and methodology. Now on this video, I'm going to focus more on methodology itself, what you're going to be encounter. So I'm bringing back my stack of standard and methodology and tools that you should have seen in the other video. And we're going to use that, okay, as the frame for the playground, because I keep telling you, this is your playground. You need to understand the environment that you're going to be in when you go into an organization. You're going to be managing project. You need to understand the playground, okay? So not to redo that video of the difference. So let's focus on the middle layer, which is the methodologies that needs to appear. So to do that, I'll do like usual. I'm going to move myself in the corner and have the chart and bigger and then this. So let's get in the corner. Am I in the frame? I am in the frame. It's just going to move again. So again, standard methodologies and tool. Let's get the first type of methodology that is the most commonly used. That is in line with the PMBOK standard, which is what we call the waterfall phase gate type by phase type of methodology. And what it is, it's a series of phases that we define for an organization. Typically it's for an organization, and say, okay, here you want to do, for example, here a type of a project where there's a storytelling. Okay, let's say you're developing an experiential type of product where people will get into a product and actually interact with characters and with the intelligence artificial. So it's a type of product like that where there is the hard coding, but there's also a story that goes with also the design of the character. So now to do that, we say, okay, what do I need to do? Well, we got a certain big phase that we have to go through. Why we have these big phases? Because we're trying to minimize the level of investment that we have to do and make sure we have this shake hand between the people that are doing the project and will be using the resource or investing the resource, and the people that are making decision from a business perspective, and in order for them to assess, is this still in line to what we want? Does that do the job that the intent was when we decide to say yes to this project? So when we decided based on the justification, it was worth it to do that because we're going to get these benefits. We don't want to wait at the end to realize, well, you know what? You have spent all this money. We could have told you that this is not what we want, right? And it's already delivered. That's why you will break it down in different phases and making sure you have that kind of interaction a shake hand between the organization and the decision maker, especially on the resource, and you, the project, to do that. So, for example, in this case, we would say we have like 5 phases. We have a storytelling and hotline planning. We have a scenario and logic design. We have a UX design and coding. We have a lot of integration and testing, and then we have a deployment phase. Okay, within these phases, we might have certain steps that we have to go through. Okay, however, we say, here's the decision point. The decision point happens at the end of a phase, and that decision point, sometimes it's called a gate. Okay, in many places they would call it the gate process, because there's a gate at the end of a phase, and the gate is, let's review where we are in this project. And the review will usually be done following a set of activity, like for example, some of the activities that will happen and who's doing it. With the team, the writers, the project manager, the producer. So, you would have defined that. It's a one-page setup, but typically there might be a little bit more behind it. But this is the activity you needs to do, the deliverables that needs to be presented at this phase, okay? And people understand that, okay, if I do this project, now comes the tool, okay? If I go back to the previous one, I say there's tools, okay? Now I'm going to need to bring the tool to do this. What kind of tools do I need to be able to do these activities? Do I need a template? Do I need a software? Do I need like a spreadsheet that does all kind of things, okay? So the tools comes and support what do we need to do at each phase to get through it, okay? Once we understand this is our life cycle to do that type of project, well, project managers, they need to construct, a project charter and a project plan that will be in line versus these things, okay? Versus these phases and versus what we want to achieve, okay? On the traditional life cycle, there will be a project plan that will pretty much dictate all the activities that are listed there at high level, but in a lot more details, in the project plan, to get through all of this. Now, we might have different ways of doing the planning. It's not the goal to get into this. We might do a detailed plan in the first phase and high level on the others. Once we get to the second phase, we go back. Well, there's many ways we could tackle the planning, but that's not the point. There is a project manager that will put everything together, and fundamentally, building a project plan is learning how to put all the section, risk, communication, scope, cost, if you obviously schedule and quality, all of this, okay? But now you need to build it thinking about all of these sections, but along this line of going through all of this, all the activities that are required to complete this thing. So this is the traditional one, okay? Project managers. The thing is, in the same organization, you might have 2 or 3 different life cycle. You cannot expect to say, here's the type of we're going to do. And for example, I'm going to do a continuous improvement project using the same life cycle. That's just not going to work, okay? So we might need another life cycle type of methodology to drive projects that are more, let's say, continuous improvement, or they're more like, let's say, coding the web, a new web application, okay? Might be a different one. So again, that's the reality, okay? A lot of the time in the past, we were trying to develop one size fits all. One methodology, we could do all our project with that methodology. Well, that's no longer the case, okay? You have to adapt your methodology, which make it more difficult. But if you master the standard, the what needs to be done, it's just the how. Okay, what you're seeing here, it's the how we do things when we do that project in this organization. Now, I'm going to go to another organization. The how might be different to do the same type of project, okay, because they're doing it in a different way. So that's what a traditional life cycle, gate process, waterfall process looks like, okay? Now, the other big type of change or in terms of approach, okay, is the Agile family. And the Agile family, first of all, Agile is not a methodology. Agile is like a practice. It's a overall approach. It's not a standard yet. Okay, I know some people are working hard to make it a standard, but it's not a standard yet. Okay. However, under Agile, there are methodologies that are, let's say, connected to the Agile philosophy. Okay. I say philosophy because I see it more like that. Okay, when you move to Agile from the traditional, or if you're learning Agile, you're learning really different philosophy of attacking your project, and that's why it's important that you understand what is this philosophy of Agile before you tackle a methodology like I'm going to show you, because it's one thing to do Agile and it's another thing to be Agile. And try to do Agile without being Agile. That usually give you what we call a fake Agile. Okay? So let's take a look at what the hell we're talking about when we're talking about Agile. Now here's an example. I'm going to use Scrum, okay, as one methodology, because that's the one that mostly used, especially here in Montreal. That's the one that seems to be the leading one. Okay. Now, first of all, once you are working in a pure Agile environment, there is no such a thing as a project manager. Okay, it's a different role. Okay, we don't build a project plan. However, we will build a project charter. Usually, we will have something that define the reasons why we're investing into this. That's what the charter is about, and the reasons we are putting resource behind this. We're trying to get these results there. We're looking for this business type of success. So the charter will be there. However, there's not going to be a project plan, okay? And therefore, what kind of plan exists? Well, it's going to be an iteration plan, which is a different approach, right? And the thing is, it's important that we understand that looking in the organization, we might have projects. Let's say I'm a program manager that are using traditional, but also I might have projects that are using Agile methodology like Scrum, and there's not going to be a project plan. There will be an iteration plan. What is an iteration plan? Well, first of all, there are phases, and here there's different variants in terms of how you could do the Agile. Here typically, and you would have a release planning phase, which is you're going to figure out, what is it that we're going to need to do, and we're going to develop what we call the product backlog, the story. I'm not going to get into teaching how to do Agile because by itself, it's a full course. It's very important that you spend the right time to understand that. But, you will have a phase of pretty much deciding what is it that we need to produce on this project. And usually will be a series of stories that will be building a backlog, a product backlog that says all of these have value for me as a user of this product or service, and therefore here are my requirements, but they don't want to call it requirements. We're going to be calling my stories, which are expressing, the way I'm expecting this, whatever you're delivering, to behave when I'm going to be using it or when we're going to be triggering it. So the release planning is, also figuring out who we're going to need, getting your people on board, the whole bit. Sometimes there is an iteration 0 setup. It's not everybody that does it, which is setting up your environment that you're going to be working. If you're going to need database, if you're going to need, usually we force for a collateral, so that people getting close so they could, work together, exchange, favorize a lot of communication. So you might want to create an environment, move everybody, office, set up their workstation, everybody's in the same area. So the whole setup phase, it's called iteration 0, okay? We try to separate that than the real iteration where we're really working on producing the content. Following that, we decide how many iterations there will be to get through this backlog. And the iteration might be, let's say in the case of Scrum, 2 or 4 weeks. And there will be a lot of features that are really specific to the world of Agile. First of all, in a Scrum, you will have a Scrum Master, somebody that is in charge of the process of, making the smoothness going from iteration to iteration, making sure that all impediments are dealt with, making sure that any issues gets resolved, making sure that, we facilitate all the meeting for grooming, scoring, and all of these activities. So You will do your iteration. Iterations always break, like you have a first day where you're going to do the planning for this iteration, deciding out of the total product backlog which one we're going to be doing in this sprint. And the sprint is a 2 to 4 week. We're going to have a meeting every day. It's a stand-up meeting, 15 minutes. We get together. And usually we do that in front of a board where we could see where our story are, which ones are already in development, which ones are done, which ones are in testing. So there's different way you could structure that, but it's a very visual type of approach. That's the idea. We all go together, send up in there, and over 15. Oh, I'm there. I've got a problem with that, etc. So there's a lot of exchange, okay? And once you complete your iteration, there is a testing. There's validation of what we've done. We're reviewing that. We're commenting on that. We're identifying any issues. The issues get added to the product backlog, regroom, so we can start planning the next iteration. So the good news is, even though we don't have a project manager, there will be a business owner, someone representing the business that should be part of this team, and being able to make decisions regarding priorities. What are the most valuable thing that we should do at each iteration, because we're focusing on building on value, okay? And the most valuable thing, that's what we want to get up first. So that's pretty much the way we're going to get through this. Of course, there's different role also. So if you get an Agile training, you'll get all the different roles that you might have there. And, well, it's an iteration plan. We will have also sometimes a pre-release where it's kind of all the acceptance that are there, and then in final production or turnover to production after that. Okay, so that's what the kind of the environment that you will see. That's the kind. So of course you could start to see it's not going to be the same tool that's going to go to support a life cycle like this versus the traditional one. You could see the difference, right? This one is like you have to, you have a burn rate, you will have a product backlog, you will have, a sprint backlog, you will have, your stories. So it's different tools, different ways of tackling that, right? Maybe the tool before for justification, building a business case, feasibility study, they might be the same, okay? The before might be the same, but definitely the execution is not the same. So that being said, this is, for example, a different ways that require different course, different training, okay, different approach. It's not because you've been doing project traditional way for many years, you could jump on an Agile and be effective immediately, because you will lose your, let's say, point of reference that you have, right? You will get, confused on the initiation. Okay, where's the planning phase? Well, the planning is done at every iteration. It's not done, for the whole project. There is no schedule. There is no such a thing. There is only iteration, and this is what we're going to be doing. So you can lose your frame of reference very easily by jumping into it. So that's why you really need to take the time. You don't need the full Scrum, but you could take 2 days on Agile, and you'll have the bulk of it and be able to be functional after that to learn Scrum or another one. So those would be two big approach, completely different. What's the big difference? And usually, and something we talk about, and when we do more and more, we do training that's got both methodology and especially the companies that do both. And we try to understand which one would be the best for which type of project, because you want to make sure you tailor the proper methodology to your project. Because you have a wrong methodology to a certain project, you might be suffering quite a bit. So the big comparison, and your waterfall or the traditional one, if you want, you will fix the requirements. So we'll be focusing on understanding the requirement from the stakeholder from the start, right? And this is usually where we get into trouble, because we expect to have the requirements or to have our stakeholders being able to express their needs, and those are the right needs, and we'd be able to translate that into requirements. But sometimes these requirements are not easy to understand. Even the stakeholders, they have no idea, right? You're talking about intelligence artificial, you're talking about, 5G, you're talking, what's your requirement? I have no idea. Or you're bringing a new IT solution, how's that affecting your process? I don't know. Okay, which system? I don't know. So sometimes getting into the requirement, it's a tough challenge, okay? And trying to say we're going to fix it, and then after we're going to develop the plan. And then, of course, the budget will come with the plan, with the resource we're putting on the plan. And then try to control these two constraints versus fixing the requirement. And that's why we do earn value, to try to know where we are on the time and the cost. Okay. And that's the way we do that. We have a project plan, which got a schedule that pretty much document all the activities to do all the requirements. There is no necessarily weighting factor on the value of the requirements. We treat all requirements as important in order for us to get acceptance. So we try to find the shortest route from start to the end in order to complete this project and done all the activities that are in line with the deliverables, are in line with the requirements. So that's the goal. It's the shortest route we're looking to get there, and a less costly one. However, in Agile, we decided to reverse that triangle. And basically, the idea of Agile is say, we're going to fix the time, in a sense that we know how many iterations there will be there. Okay, it's going to be 8 iterations of 4 weeks or 2 weeks, let's say. Okay, we're going to have not completely fix the resource, but a good chunk, a good proportion, at least 75 or 80% of the resource will be frozen. Okay, we know they'll be there at every iteration. So we're kind of freezing these things, and what we're not sure is what it is that we gonna have in terms of value at the end of this. Okay, we know the backlog at the beginning. It's like here. We know the backlog at the beginning, but how many we're going to drive down, in each iteration, because we're going to have problems, we're going to have change, we're going to have a lot of things in these iterations. And what's going to be left at the end? Well, the idea is, hopefully, at the end of your last iteration, what's left is what it is that's got the lowest value and probably the highest effort to get through. And then we could question, do you really need that? And a lot of the time people say, well, what we have already, it's doing the job. If we don't have this, if we don't have that, it's okay. Okay. That happened quite a bit, okay, in Agile mode, because the less valuable feature, end up being work at the end, and at the same time, require a lot of thinking. Because if I need to add another iteration, which I know how much it's going to cost, I know how much time it's going to take to get that feature, and the business owner, which is there, looking at it, say, well, I'm not sure we want to spend more time and to get that. I can live without that. Okay, and that's one of the big value we have there. But also, there's a lot of advantage on Agile, such as being able to deal with change as you go. Versus dealing with the change requests and processing the change requests and updating the baseline. So all of this, you don't have that in Agile. You just do it at every iteration. So that's why you would have these two. You need to pick the right one for the right type of project. It's not the goal of this video to tell you this is the type one. It's a longer discussion than that. But right now, this is a big thing in terms of which one we should do with Scrum and which one I should do with my lifecycle. And let's be honest, there is like evangelists of Agile right now that are pushing like crazy to try to do everything in Agile. I understand you can get a lot of success in Agile, and I know, and I've been using it quite a bit, but in certain projects, you forget about Agile, okay? Especially once you have contract. Okay? If you have a project with customers and you have contract and you need to publish status versus date, there are payment terms that are connected to meeting certain milestone at a certain date. You don't want to be in iteration. You want to have a plan, and you want to be able to track, and you want to be able to make decision in order to hit these milestones. So that's the kind of thing. You got other things also that are limiting Agile, and sometimes people don't understand and say, we could do everything in Agile, and they get themselves into trouble, because you don't have a plan, okay? And not having a plan in certain environment when you're working with other groups, such as legal, for example, if you need to clear rights, patents, and stuff like that, they don't work by iteration. Same thing with procurement. If you need a request for proposal, RFP, that doesn't work in Agile, okay? You might have vendors that do not work in Agile. So again, you got to be careful when you push that. But definitely, when there is project where you are in controlling your environment, that's why it's a more deeper discussion. You should go with Agile. You got a lot of bonus, and the whole problem of figuring out the right requirements, and that risk of having it wrong, kind of gets dealt with at every iteration, because as you're producing, your stakeholder can look at it and say, well, it's not what I had in mind. Oh, okay, that's an interesting thing. So now we could fix it. That being said, what are the people working on these days? Because there's, value in each of these methods, separate them. If you look at them separately, there's value, okay? There's value of doing traditional. There's value of doing it by iteration. There's value having a project plan that says, here's the date. There's value having, these iterations that say we could deal with all your change and your risk and fix that, and we could get you there and could drive highest value. You could see that. Now, people say, how can we get the best of the best? How can we get the strength of the Agile, the strength of the traditional, and put them together and get a one new methodology that will provide us, the benefit of both? And it's called the hybrid. An hybrid method is what? Is a combination. So basically, you would start the same. You would have a charter. You would do your initiation. You will do the planification. You will do a project management plan. You will have a project manager. However, the execution will not be done versus your, shortest path to get to the end, activities versus the requirement. And this is the kind of thing that we need to work on. It's not clear yet. It's a lot of challenge, because you can remember, right? I said one is driving activities to complete the requirements, and doesn't bother for weighting the requirements, giving them more value. Another one, they're all the same, and it's let's look for the shortest path and the cheapest way. Well, the other one is like, from all of these requirement stories, let's put it this way, I need to score them and say which one's got the most value. I'm going to work first on whatever's got the most value. That's not the same thing, okay? So that means your project plan needs to plan for iteration, and your scope needs to be tied to a product backlog. Different ballgame, okay? It's difficult to do. I have to say that, okay? And there's a lot of people that are testing it, exploring it. But if you are there and you're thinking about doing that, I'd say, but I see that happening quite a bit. It's a tough challenge, right? And I'm looking, if any of you are working in hybrid model and they think they got the best way of planning iteration in a project plan and being able to produce date, but keeping the value-driven approach, I'd say please put it in the comment. I'm interested to hear about that one, because this is really where the challenge is in order to get the value of both, okay? So this is what's out there right now. So those that give you an idea of what's out there in terms of methodologies that you might encounter, right? You might have different methodologies on the traditional side. We saw one, but within the same organization might be a different one. And if you change from one organization to another one, you might have different life cycle in the organization. Or you might not have a life cycle, which is usually a problem when an organization does not have a life cycle, and all the project manager, they got pretty much to decide what phase they're going to do and when they're going to see the executive. So this is a recipe for failure, okay? So if your organization right now, you're sitting there and say, what's our methodology, and we don't know, it's all left to the project manager, well, you might be wasting a lot of resource in your organization on the wrong project, on the wrong assumptions, on the wrong justification also. So let's make sure you define one. It's not complicated to define. It doesn't take long. It's a workshop, a couple of days, and you got it mapped, and you know that everybody could be aligned. You could align your tool. So it's not the end of the world, okay? Also, my other message is, like, if you're going to be learning, if you are a good traditional type of project manager, on the traditional side, I say go learn also Agile, because it's coming. It's not going to go away. There's a lot of value on Agile. Open up a little bit. Stop being a little bit tree huggers. This is my way is better. No, there's other ways there. Okay, and Agile is coming, and it's the new kid on the block, and it's not going to go away. So learn it, so we could get the best out of this. If we got all the people who started working and seeing how we can make it work together, it's just going to get better. Okay, and if you have learned from Agile, I suggest you start to learn the traditional way also, because you're not going to get away of trying to expand your career and try to pick up bigger project. At one point, you will have to deal with a life cycle, because it's not going to be done in Agile. Because, as you get to a certain level, certain project, I know there's philosophy of save and things like that, but I think it's pie in the sky. Honestly, I'm looking at that and say, that's not going to happen anytime soon. Maybe in certain industry that are new, that are built it on Agile, framework first. It could happen. But if you were in a bank, or if you were in any traditional companies thinking that you're going to move on with save, that's not going to happen. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. Again, if you are involved into this, put your comment into the bottom.